Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome all to this second webinar in the HESI Plus 10 series. My name is Ola Göransson and I'm with the Division for SDGs of the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. This series is organizing the lead up to the HESI Global Forum, which will take place on 6th of July in the margins of the high-level political forum on sustainable development. Last webinar, we looked at how the COVID-19 pandemic has transformed higher education, for good or worse. And today we're exploring how the SDGs can be best integrated into higher education, whether it's through research, teaching, or learning. We have a great panel here today with a very impressive lineup of speakers. So before we get going, allow me to make some housekeeping rules. The event is recorded and will be available afterwards on the HESI website. And if at any time you have any question or comments, please use the chat box. Our great support team of Sophie and Celine are keeping track of all of this and will feed comments and questions into the discussions. Next slide, please. Colleagues, it's widely recognized that the SDGs are everyone's business and really needs all sectors, stakeholders, and people to get behind it in order to be fully implemented. The distribution of participants from a broad range of sectors and regions clearly speaks to this notion, and it's very encouraging to see such a turnout here today. So thank you all for tuning in, and I wish you a very fruitful and inspiring experience with us today. With that, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Florencia Librizzi, who will conduct a feedback exercise with all of you. Flo, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ola, and thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today and to support this webinar, and more generally to work closely with Ola and with Sophie and support the Higher Education for Sustainability initiative as a co-chair, first on behalf of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and now on behalf of Solitest. So we want to get started, and we want to start by getting some feedback from the audience to try to understand, as Ola was saying, we have a very impressive cohort of participants from different sectors, and we want to learn more from you in terms of how is it being integrating the Sustainable Development Goals into higher education? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities when it comes to teaching, to researching, to the organizational practices, to the partnerships that we are able to develop? So we plan this short exercise. Please go to Menti and use the code or the QR code so you can provide your input. We give some minutes to the audience, and we're going to start seeing what you have to tell us today. It is very interesting, I think, like seeing how this input is coming in. We're giving a couple more minutes, but from years of experience, what we've been hearing is that oftentimes, clearly there is sometimes a twofold, right? It's the two sides of a coin, those challenges and opportunities. And we have seen the important role of leadership when it comes to deans and presidents to drive this agenda, and oftentimes also could potentially a barrier to if the leadership doesn't fully understand the big picture and the opportunities and the role of higher education. So we are seeing here some of the challenges pointing out to leadership, in some cases clearly as well faculty, and the need of faculty development to ensure that we're able to in a disciplinary way. Resources, final resources is here almost close to, I mean, the same level almost as leadership, very close, and other competing priorities. And we hear that often, right? What are the other priorities that schools have on how the attention, either when it comes to student enrollment, accreditations, rankings, or others? These are some of the things that we are looking at HESI in the focus groups, in the action groups. We've been convening the different stakeholders to understand how also accreditation can be a driver of sustainability instead of a barrier, or rankings can actually help us to look at sustainability. Great, so that's a good picture. I don't see more answers coming. Great, so let's look at the opportunities. What have we observed these years? No answers are coming. I don't know. Yeah, there you go. I hope we have opportunities. I mean, I see them. We hope that this will also help the panelists. We have a very, as Ola pointed out, we have a very, very distinguished panel and moderator. So we look forward to hearing from them and also picking on some of these points that the audience are making right now. So we're seeing some increase in terms of the SDGs and ESG recognition in business and financial communities. I see that every day, but it's great to see that others are seeing that too. Increasing availability of educational resources to teach the SDGs, I agree. I had the pleasure to head the SDG Academy at the UNSCSM, so I think they're clearly contributing on that, and many other initiatives around UN and also in other stakeholders and universities that they're making efforts on educational resources. Students clearly are a driver for sustainability. They want to be taught more, and they also want to have more sustainable jobs. And we are here the latest one, so increasing availability of financial resources to address the SDGs. Yes, so when it comes to financial resources. That's an interesting picture. Great. And we have one more question. I don't know if we have any input coming, but I think that should be it. We have one more question for you. There's actually no correct answers, but I think it's great to be building some perspective together and understanding where the gaps are. So here is, what is our sense? Do we really think that COVID has helped increase awareness on higher education in terms of advancing the SDGs? What is your take here?
Florencia, I vote and I didn't see my vote, so I don't know.
Yeah, I hope there's not a technical issue there. So I don't know, we can give it a couple more minutes. And if not, let's see, let's refresh that. Thank you, Sophie. Okay, so I don't know, Sophie, if we can try to launch it one more time. And if not, okay, there you go. Okay, so it's like overwhelming yes, right? So apparently we're pretty convinced that this has really shaken, the COVID pandemic has really shaken us together as a collective, and hopefully using that increase in awareness. Great. Thank you so much for your input. Without further ado, we want to hear from all of the great speakers that we have lined up. So it is my pleasure to introduce the great moderator that we have today, Jean-Christophe Carteron, JC, who is the co-founder and president of Sulites, and also a special advisor or senior advisor of HESI since its creation at the run-up of Rio +20. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Florencia, and thanks everyone to be with us today. As you mentioned, we are really privileged today to welcome an extremely rich panel of speakers, and as you will see, with a real diversity of profile. So I'm convinced that we will be able to learn to better understand what are the challenge and the opportunity to integrate sustainability and SDG into higher ed. And we all know that university in general have a huge responsibility and a really leading role to play in achieving these SDG. So we have 4 global questions, and actually what I suggest is we will cover different type of questions from research, pedagogy, and also the way how we manage the campus. Before handing over, just give you some rules. We have 7 panel today, so in order to have a discussion with all the audience, I will start to ask them an introductory question, and they will have 4 minutes to answer. And I have my little ring like that. Just 3.5 minutes, just to let them know that they have to give the floor soon. And then during that time, as soon as you have an idea or a question or something like that, you can please put that on the chat. And Ola, Sophie, and Florencia will collect those questions. If you have a specific question, if you have a question for someone in specific, please add the name of this person. But please do it during this first round, and then we'll ask that at the end. So I really wish you a pleasant discussion, and I will directly start with Mr. Akihiro Takemoto, and I would like to start. So you are the program head of United Nations University and Institute of Advanced Study of Sustainability. And from your position, Mr. Takemoto, you probably have a global view of these issues. And I would like to, and I know that you are launching next year a postgraduate degree specialization on the Paris Agreement. So could you please tell us a little bit more about that program, please?
Thank you very much, Jean-Christophe. First of all, thank you very much, the organizer, for inviting me to join such an exciting event, which is completely in line with our strategic directions. So, yes, the specialization, postgraduate degree specialization on Paris Agreement, our institute announced to establish this initiative at COP26 in Glasgow last November. Since you may know that it was the historical moment that all parties agree the rule book of the Paris Agreement. So now we are in the process for implementation. The implementation requires a huge amount of knowledge and capacity. So and we have been always considered how we can contribute to the ESG for 2030. So then it comes to my mind that we should highlight education for the implementation of climate change will contribute to other kinds of sustainable development goals. Then taking advantage of our function of a postgraduate degree program, we decided to launch the specialization focus on Paris Agreement. They are mainly focused on the education, higher education, to develop practitioners in mainly the developing countries to promote any kinds of climate change policy through the coordination with various stakeholders. So now we aim to develop curriculums to utilizing practicums, known as courseworks in collaboration with various partners. The other point I would like to focus is climate change itself. Cannot be achieved through the technological options. That they need capacity, not only climate change, but also with other climate change, from the context of synergy between climate change and SDGs. So this course, this program will focus on the education in the area of synergy between climate change focal area and other kinds of SDGs, not only for other environmental issues, but also social and economic issues, to including inclusiveness or just transition or economic growth, other kinds of synergetic concept we will promote to educate. So I hope that we will launch this program autumn next year. Thank you very much. That's all. Back to you.
Thank you, and thanks, Mr. Takemoto, to be a good student and to keep the timing. So thank you for that. So you give us a good example. So we all know that we don't stop learning when we leave the university. So I want to ask Mr. David Smith, who you are the director of the Center of Environmental Management and Coordination of the Institute of Development in the University of West Indies in Jamaica, and you are also, I know, really involved in the SDSN network. So as a researcher, can you share any good practices regarding integration of SDG into research?
I believe so, and I think what has been happening, particularly over COVID, we've become more flexible at delivering courses, whereas before we insisted that students turn up to the lectures. Now we can make sure that they find the nearest good computing terminal. We have found there's a particular need within the disaster risk reduction community within the Caribbean to learn more about building resilience to climate change. As everybody is aware, climate change is a threat to the entire world, but the effects of climate change tend to be felt earlier in the tropics than in the higher latitudes. And unfortunately, one of the effects of the climate change within the tropics is more severe tropical storms, cyclones, and hurricanes. And there's a need, not just in the disaster risk reduction community, to learn how to deal with this increased threat, but we've been finding a lot of interest from small businesses to understand how to deal with the threat. How does somebody who is mainly themselves and say 2 employees deal with the threat of a Category 5 hurricane bearing down on the island in which they live and are carrying out their work? We've been doing quite a lot of training of small businesses and micro enterprises over the last, let's say, year. It's been good, and I believe we have reached an audience which we could not have effectively reached because we now immediately say, well, let's do it online. Whereas if somebody had asked us to do this 3 or 4 years ago, we'd have been trying to figure out the travel budget of how do we move people around the Caribbean to get all of this done. Hoping that the businesses will never be tested, but we know that of course they will, and at some point a storm will come. So that's an example, I think, of being able to help build some resilience, particularly in a set of islands which are highly dependent in terms of their economies on tourism as the main way in which money is earned and the main activity within the economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to give the floor to Anna. Anna, you are a researcher professor at HESI Business School in Portugal. And I know that you're also very involved in different networks like JLI and Prime. And I would like you to share with us the opportunity of course, but also the challenges of integrating SDG in the pedagogy, which is always quite interesting question.
Thank you very much, JC. I would like to start by thanking for the kind invitation. It's a great pleasure to share the virtual stage with such distinguished colleagues. And to address your question, I'll start by saying that higher education institutions in general, but of course business schools in particular, they're facing an increasing pressure to include sustainability in general in their teaching and their different activities, as I mentioned. And indeed, the 2030 agenda seems to be pushing globally, not only across borders, but also sectorial borders in terms of industries. And this has allowed, I believe, for a more holistic and systemic view of sustainability, which I believe is one of the great opportunities of integrating the SDGs into pedagogy, because it allows us for a more holistic view of sustainability, not so much split into different categories. Of course, it has its challenges, but we'll come to them. Also, it's important to moving beyond the silo-based sustainability teaching as a link to the systemic approach. So one of the opportunities to break those silos and stop splitting the teaching between environmental studies alone and social alone and economic. So I think this is a good opportunity to move in that direction. Of course, and one of the questions in the survey from Florencia earlier, the demand from students. There is an increasing demand from students. For instance, if we look at the positive impact rating, and I know there are some familiar faces here in the webinar that are familiar with that. So students are increasingly asking for this. So this is an opportunity for schools to move in that direction, but also companies, they are demanding for more new skills, and there's an increasing demand for sustainable jobs, as Florencia was referring to as well. Look at LinkedIn and we see the amount of new offers that pop up every day. And of course, in this journey, I believe, and that has been the experience of HESI Business School, that international networks, as you mentioned, JC, they are very, very critical. So we have, for instance, the relationship with Prime, and I can't forget that it was after the Global Forum 2017 that we brought the idea of integrating the SDGs into our activities in our school. We've been using the blueprint for SDG integration. That has led us, for instance, to create the new MBA in Sustainable Global Management and ABA accredited MBA, but also integrating across disciplines and across different courses the idea of the SDGs. And they have other projects like the I5, Impactful 5, Learning and Leadership Education, that Sully test, and I'm working with you as well in that direction. A project funded by LEC Foundation. And there are different opportunities. The groups, Isabel, for instance, as a convener of one of them, you'll be talking about that probably. GRLI, I can't forget GRLI, how important it is for us. Multiple initiatives, partner pods, Dean's cohorts, all this is very important. The challenge of evolving top management has been referred already, and this is a very good way of having everyone involved and engaged. So an international shared model that brings international students together and international professors. So these are all opportunities that international networks such as these, or the GBSN, for instance, that have webinars, challenges. And I can't forget, of course, the UNSDN SDSN with the SDG Academy that has been referred to as well, with plenty of highly valuable resources. So with all this, it's not free of challenges. And so I've mentioned some of them, but I think most of all, we need to move in that direction. Thank you, JC.
Thank you, Anna. Isabel, in my own organization at Solites, we define sustainability literacy as the knowledge, the skills, and the mindset necessary to make informed decisions. And I know that you lead the prime working group on sustainability mindset, and you are passionate of this notion of impact and systemic change. On this specific point, could you quickly present us what you have put in place in relation with to the mindset, the sustainability mindset, and especially tell us what we should do to expand that mindset?
Okay. Well, you know, the SDGs are about new behaviors. And that brings me back about 17 years ago when I started the research. I wanted to understand what led some individuals towards sustainability behaviors. And thinking that maybe there are some things that we could intentionally develop in the new generation. That was the start of what later became the concept of the sustainability mindset that you mentioned. What is the mindset? It's a particular way of thinking and being, and in the case of a sustainability mindset, it is the foundation that leads us towards actions for the greater good. So it is not just focused on what is best for me, but I am also looking in my decisions, what is the impact of what I am doing. So over time, I started to identify and state 12 principles that are really a pathway where we can develop these key aspects of the mindset. Mindset sounds like something so abstract, and actually it's very concrete when we think like systems thinking, and there are other components. And then a way to what was put in place to really expand this was what Anna mentioned, a network of academics that were actually interested. Oh, I think I am already developing a mindset, or I want to do it, or how can we learn from and with each other. And now today they are from over 55 countries. There are about 230 colleagues that are participating in that. And then also developing tools, resources for these professors so that they can feel more comfortable and know how, with little exercises, they can develop the mindset of the students. It's really the under part of the iceberg, the mindset, that creates that motivation. And assessment also. We have now an indicator to assess where an individual is on their journey of developing that mindset. So these are.
Thank you so much, Isabel. And just for the panel, and I'm sure that you can share if you have Isabel, you just mentioned the 12 principles or some tools. Probably you can share on the chat few links where the people, and same thing for all the panels, well, the people can see your work and then start a discussion, because of course 1 hour seminar won't resolve all the problem, but at least if we can start to have this kind of connection. John, you are the chair of Monash Sustainable Development Institute and Climate Works Centre in Australia, but you are involved in many other networks, and you have played a leading political role in the Victorian Parliament, serving as Minister of Health and then of Minister of Environment. You are well placed to know that all the SDGs are all interconnected and interdependent. So do you have concrete example of research or teaching that you find inspiring for integrating multiple aspects of those SDGs? Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Christophe. And certainly my experience in politics was that the challenges of sustainable development require a multidisciplinary approach, and indeed a transdisciplinary approach where different disciplines and different sectors come together to help solve the problem. Now in my role at Monash University as chair of Monash Sustainable Development Institute, we have set up the institute based around solving big, complex sustainable development problems. And I think what inspires me large-scale programs that involve not only different disciplines, but different universities. And in many cases, I think a critical factor is to involve universities from different parts of the world and from the global north and the global south working together on common problems. And one good example that I would give is a program that we're leading, the Monash Sustainable Development Institute, but in collaboration with universities in Indonesia and in Fiji, on how to achieve clean water and sanitation in informal settlements. Because informal settlements or slums are not going to get access to traditional sewerage systems. It's not going to happen. And so what we're working on is alternatives that are nature-based and low cost, relatively low cost. So using wetlands, using biofiltration, and assessing the impact not only on cleaning the water and cleaning the environment, but we have a team of health experts working to assess the impact, particularly on children's health. So those children living in the informal settlements who've been in contact with fecal contamination, a lot of diarrhea, a lot of illness in the past, how can we address that using these low-cost measures? And I think what's critical is having a large project. So it's not just a small pilot. We've got 24 different communities that are part of it. It's a big project involving hundreds of people across a number of countries. And if you're going to solve these big challenges like sanitation and water, I think we need big projects. And that, of course, requires funders who are prepared to partner in that way. The only other one I'll touch on, I think we've talked a lot about research, but is education. And I think what really inspires me here is to see that our students get an opportunity not just to learn about a particular factor, but to use their own entrepreneurship and skills to help solve some of these social problems. And we have a program called Leave No One Behind, which supports students to come up with innovative solutions to social problems, like it could be local racism. And they've come up with some really great solutions to that. But putting the responsibility back on the students to do a lot of that.
Thank you so much. I have lots of questions for you, but really, really interesting. Aris Satya, you are the director of IPB University in Indonesia, and you're also used to working with different ministry to change policy and laws on sustainable development issues. So what do you think could be done to go further on the SDG, to really have SDG as a backbone? And how can we better integrate that into the curriculum?
Yes, thank you. I think mainstreaming SDGs into curricular research, strategies, policy, and organizational practice of higher education is very essential for higher education institutions. And we in IPB University, for example, on educations, we established new curriculum in trying to respond the new disruptions. Fourth Industrial Revolution and climate change, as well as pandemic COVID. We call K 2020 as the curriculum 2020. And this curriculum try to integrate academic and non-academic activities. This include change in mindset, attitudes, and behavior, skills, literacy, and new ways of practice, including sustainability mindset. IPB University created the K 2020 curriculum to produce powerful, agile learners and adapt to change. So that mindset and skill sets are components that IPB must strengthen, which is the outcome of our new curriculum. In research and innovations, we also have set up the Agro-Maritime 4.0 as a platform to facilitate and encourage innovations that address many important issues in SDGs. This platform aims to enhance connectivity between land and marine development and to solve socio-economic and environmental problems. We have a long list of innovations, and most of these innovations have been introduced to the government, private sectors, and community on farming, environmental management, biomedical for COVID-19 response, for increasing productivity, and so on. And also, we develop agribusiness technology park or technopark, and to implement the sustainable farming system supported by IoT and develop a model business that links farmers surrounding the campus area to markets. There are various agricultural products produced by this technopark and farmers locally, which have been marketed in 50 supermarkets in Bogor and Jakarta, in 50 big supermarkets in Jakarta. Not only linking farmers to the markets, our Technopark also provide farmers with various seeds and technologies produced by our researchers. In a wider scope, IBB University has also implemented the one we call One Village, One CEO of a program in collaboration with the private sector and the local government to encourage fresh graduate students to empower rural communities in Indonesia through sustainable farming practice. By introducing innovations to the farmers, the program has also contributed to increase productivity and added value creation. It also has linked farmers with conventional and e-market, and it has promoted product sales of the market of farmers. And by participating in programs, villagers have become more productive and been able to utilize local resources to produce various added value products, such as planting media, plotteries made from coconut fibers, organic fertilizers, various ornamental plants, and other processed food from ginger, strawberries, fish, and chips. These products have penetrated to the export market to 11 countries like Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Myanmar, Singapore, Taiwan, Japan, United, and so on. It is was one of our example how we try to implement the SDGs platform into education and innovations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Last but not least, we're lucky to have a student, Sabah Kitur. You are the president of Oikos in Bangalore. And as everyone knows, Oikos is one of the student networks really engaged in sustainable development. So as a student, I would like to have your opinion on what it will take for university to move from some example or some exemplary action to really a massive change.
Sorry, JC, Sabah could unfortunately not make it. So.
Oh, gosh.
Yes,
oh,
I'm not Sabah, but yeah.
Okay, no, I know that you're not Sabah, and you are too old to be a student. So
unfortunately, okay. Yes, yeah.
Okay, unfortunately, okay. We will continue. So please, if you have some question, we will try to take some for the panel. I can start with if you want with one that I had for Mr. Takemoto. You were and lots of people were speaking about cross-disciplinarity and the fact that we need to have people from different expertise working together. How do you manage to interact to make those people working on specific field to interact, you know, in their daily job, because actually they have their personal job, you know, they need to produce some research, for instance, and how they manage to work together. If you can share some example, especially on your program, for instance.
Yeah, thank you very much. And actually, this is a significant gap and needs in the area of good communication between the practitioner to implement the Paris Agreement and other ministry agencies in the government, as well as the private sectors and the civil societies. So in order for developing such a capacity, looking at, for example, Ministry of the Environment to coordinate among the stakeholders to establish, for example, long-term national goal to achieve the carbon neutrality by 2050. In this case, they first of all they need knowledge, not only environmental issues but also other kinds of social and economic issues, and they need good communication and using the language in the local language, but also translating the language that is discussed at the global community, in particular COP meetings. So it's quite difficult tasks, even among developed countries, in my experience as working for the Ministry of Environment Japan. But it takes the time. But by establishing, such an educational program, by inviting good instructors from the various fields and under the program, under specialization policy agreement, and also to provide students to join opportunity, have opportunity to join a project in a partner organization. For example, to send out the students to participate in a workshop in some countries, inviting private sectors to consider how to establish good, collection of greenhouse gas and reporting system. This is a key component of the Paris Agreement. As in such a way, they will learn, students will learn the skills to, smooth operation of coordination among the stakeholders. This is just one example, but we need a set of educational programs, not only for courseworks, but also the practicum to develop such capacity. This is just an idea. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Thanks, Mr. Takemoto. David, if we follow that idea, I have a question for you about how most of the time the researcher, they of course focus on one specific field. They are expert in one specific field. So have you seen some experimentation or some, I don't know, initiative to try to train or to bring some knowledge for experts, so global knowledge, training the trainers, have you seen something like that? And in your specific project that you explain, not all the researchers are expert in every single SDG. So is it a challenge, or have you seen some way to help the other researcher to learn more on the global issue and then on specific topics?
Yeah, great. It's a very good question, Desi. So, yes, I fully agree. So, but we are in the middle of the process. Let me give you an example. One of the research topics on this area is research on the scenario assessment to predict the future greenhouse gases utilizing integrated assessment model. So so far, some Japanese renowned universities educated many young scholars coming from various developing countries in recent, I think, 2 decades. Then now, so the students graduating from the Japanese university now began to work in the Ministry of the Environment of many developing countries. Then some of them have leading the policy making in developing countries, for example, in Cambodia. And then these people were successful to create the innovative net zero emissions plans, long-term plans to submit to the UNFCCC last year. Cambodia is one of the low LDCs. However, there are only 2 LDCs to submit such ambitious goal. But actually said it was thanks to the education at the university, so he could contribute to the plan. So now such a people can, I think, become the new leader among the developing countries. So it takes a time, but we need some systematic framework to continuously develop such a high quality young person. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Probably a question for David Smith, and especially with your background with also SDSN. How much, there is a question, how might university contribute to the country voluntary review process that the UN is requiring? All the country needs to collect data for the people who don't know that. So if you can explain and then try to see if you manage to make a bridge between your project and that. Thank you.
Right, and I'm sure it will vary from one country to another, but definitely there is a strong input on the report from my colleagues working in particular at the Mona campus of the University of the West Indies, particularly those people who are working in areas to do with climate change, which is of course very important and a major let's say, a concern and a potential barrier to achieving all of the sustainable development goals throughout the Caribbean. So what you find with these reports and several of the reports that parties have to produce for the United Nations, a lot of the technical work is either done by colleagues at the university in the different campuses, because we have campuses in different countries, but also you will find that many of our recent graduates, our postgraduates, end up working in ministries and departments of government whose responsibility it is to produce the reports. And often when that happens, they will also go back to the people who lectured and worked with them when they were students to get help in actually putting the reports together. So I would say that the University of the West Indies, and I suspect also University of South Pacific, and probably Fiji National University as well, have a lot of their staff play a very strong role in putting together reports like that.
Thank you so much. I have a question for Isabel. You spoke about mindset and sustainability mindset. What are the main challenges and the main points of leverage to develop new mindsets? And of course, and how you address that?
The challenges, I think we have a bottleneck in the educators, because dealing with the mindset is not the same as teaching a course, a subject. It is not just about developing skills or knowledge, imparting knowledge. It's getting into a different arena where it is more about being a learning facilitator, where you as an educator can ask questions so that the students can start to reflect on their own paradigm, on the lens through which they are looking into the world. And you know, a paradigm, it's like water for a fish. We don't see it. But when we can notice what is our taken for granted worldview and how much that worldview has created the unsustainability that we see, because that is where we have to unplug it. I started to do a correlation between what is the mindset required for the SDGs. What is the mindset that we need to have if we want to achieve those goals? Well, if you want to work for peace, you definitely need to be inclusive. You need to have a both and logic, for example. It's no longer either I am right or you are right. One of those has to be wrong. So we have to bridge that very odd pattern of seeing the world, and you have the same either or, either profit or business. No, I cannot pay either profit or planet. I cannot pay attention to the planet because I have to take care of business. And we have to notice how we have that pattern of thinking and start revisiting it and creating new ways of looking into information. So I think the biggest challenge is helping educators become also learning facilitators. They don't have to provide all the answers, but how can they ask those questions? And I think the opportunity is actually in the audience, in the students, because day after day, I see students are so ready for revisiting the mindset. They don't have too much to unlearn. They already see, hey, this is the world that you have been creating. It's not working, hey? Okay, so what do we need to do differently? They are so ready. They need the language, they need tools, they need people that help them, support them going and being, having the self-confidence that actually one person can start a difference. So that is, that's why I say the bottleneck is in the educators. It's not unsurmountable. That's the good news.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Anna, I've seen you wanted probably to react to probably the previous thing. I didn't see your hand. Sorry.
No worries, Jesse. If I have the opportunity to to add something, when we're discussing and looking for examples of how to promote the interdisciplinary approach to the study of sustainability-related issues, it reminded me of a lab that we have created recently here at HESI. It's called the Social Digital Lab for Public Policy. And we have 4 schools: management, the business school, we have social sciences, sociology, public policies, and so on, and technology and architecture. And what this lab did is it put together 6 centers, 6 research centers. So each one of them still exists independently, but we come together and work on, so different researchers come together and work around 5 interdisciplinary thematic lines, such as regenerative territories for carbon neutrality, social inclusion, equality and citizenship, societal health, global governance, and digital transformation in public policies. So this was the way to find the crossroads between the different schools and the different research centers to contribute to the resolution of contemporary societal problems and global challenges. So just to share an example of how we did it here at home. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I have a question, and it's for everyone. Someone asked us, how do we integrate more girls and women into the sustainable education? Is anyone want to? Because we didn't speak about gender yet. We are not supposed to have all the answer. So, oh yeah, David, please.
I think it may be in some countries a matter of how do we get more women and girls, but I think it's sometimes important to bear in mind we're talking about gender, the balance between men and women, women and men, girls and boys. If you look at our registration in terms of the number of students that we have, girls far outnumber boys in the tertiary education system at the university, at least in the Jamaican campus. And that's the same not just for my campus, but also for the university not far away from where I work. And this is the case not just in general subjects, but also in computer sciences, in medicine, and several in law, in several other areas where people have traditionally felt that this is a male area. So we're looking, I think, for gender equity, but let's not always assume that in every country it's a matter of we have more men than women throughout the educational level. Definitely in the case of at least one part of the Caribbean, if we're looking at very much higher registration, graduation, and participation rates of women and girls, more so than men and boys.
And David, thanks for that. Is it the same for instance, for the faculty? You have this balance in the faculty, or is just for the students? You have seen the kind of the same gender balance in your faculty, or it's not exactly the case?
I don't know the exact figures, but I would not be surprised if the faculty overall was preponderantly female. You definitely get more female graduates, and I suspect that you end up with us recruiting more female lecturers, professors, etc. Though the caveat being that when you talk about the rank of professor, and that's slightly different from other units, it's sort of the way the British system does it. We do not have more women professors at the moment, even though we may very well have more women lecturers. So
Okay.
there is definitely still balance, but it's not necessarily as simple and straightforward as it may seem from outside.
Well, thank you so much. I have a question, and again, please panel, raise your hand. How to convince leadership and faculty throughout the college about the importance of the SDG? So it's linked to one of the questions, or we probably raise awareness and probably train them. And what resources are available to assist, and where we can find that. We already spoke about some of those resources like SDG Academy, but yeah, who wants to take that one? Yes, John. Oh, sorry, yeah, John first.
Yes, this question of convincing the faculty to be involved, I think the first requirement is university leadership. You have to start with the Vice Chancellor and President putting this as a priority. Because people take their messages from that. Second, you need it to be part of the career plan with incentives. Traditionally, most incentives in universities would mitigate against interdisciplinary projects of this nature because the incentives are around publishing in your own specialised field and not solving public problems. So we've really got to change those incentives. And I think that's particularly true for early and mid-career academics. You know, academics that already have a reputation have the time and ability to solve the major problems. But for the younger academics who are trying to make their way up, it's all about publishing. And we have to change that incentive. And then third is funding. If you can show that there's a source of funding, then that attracts people. So you've really got to have those three things, I think: leadership, career, and funding.
Thank you so much. It makes really lots of sense. Isabel, you want to say something?
Yeah, I do a lot of faculty development, so my perspective comes through the voices and experiences of these colleagues. One of the things that I hear a lot is that the SDGs provide a framework of what is possible. And I think that is particularly valued by the students who rapidly feel overwhelmed when they say, oh my God, the things are really bad and what can I do? By having a framework like the SDGs with the 167 targets, there is really something for everybody. Even if you are 16 years old, there are areas where you can contribute. This may not be just the jurisdiction of institutions, big corporations, or governments. What is it that we, each one where we are, can do? And so that has been like a bridge that connected these students with some sort of empowerment. Oh, actually, I can do something. This is my area where I can influence and contribute. So I think that is what a very powerful way. And then another thing that I have found is that no matter what discipline someone is teaching, when you make it relevant with what is, how will you use these contents, frameworks, whatever it is that you are discussing in class, in your discipline, how do you connect it with the real world that is the word that we need to shape? And there is something for everybody. I say if you are alive today, you have a role to play. So that is my experience.
I think it makes sense also. One of the things that I experienced in my previous job was the fact that you had lots of goodwill from the faculty. You know, they are citizens like anyone, so they want to do something, but they actually sometimes have struggled to find the link between what they teach and the SDG. And I don't know if someone has this experience of people who actually are committed, but actually they don't know what does it mean for a marketing professor. And they are all nice people, huh? But to make the connection between the global issue and my specific course, it could be a challenge. Is anyone else have seen that? Arif?
Yes, thank you. I think one of important points is how to strengthen the cross-disciplinary collaborations. I think now we are dealing with the issue of how to promote transdiscipline, not only multidiscipline and interdiscipline. But regarding, I want to ask about regarding leadership. Based on our experience integrating some of all of the SDGs into the core activities of each institution also require explicit support from the leadership team. I think leadership is very, very important. And of course, it should be backed up by adequate resources and incentive. And critical challenges need to be tackled in the institution, inside and outside the institution environment, I think, such as incorporating sustainability principles, political environment, and stakeholders' interests. And I think for that, it is obvious that universities cannot work alone on this way, and collaboration is a key to create a major contribution to SDGs. Universities should collaborate with government, private sectors, NGO, and community to accelerate actions for SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Florencia, I think you were the first to raise your hand, and then after Anna and Isabel. Yes, Florencia. You're still mute.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that I raised my hand. Apologies.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Happy to comment, but I don't want to take the time of the speakers.
You can comment. You can do a quick comment if you want.
No, I was just surprised, I must say, with the comment of gender, because of course, I mean, I see there's so many women that are working on sustainability. I agree, not in the leadership positions necessarily, but it seems to me that oftentimes individuals that have been kind of left behind, you know, which oftentimes we see that in gender, like unfortunately half of the population is somehow, right, oftentimes facing, you know, gender inequality, as well as those often from the global south or that have experienced in some way some sort of marginality, oftentimes are more aware. I mean, I'm not saying necessarily, right, but so the issue of self-awareness and how we can really, back to the issue of mindset, which I think Isabel raised, which is so important, how we can make sure that we, all of us, continue to raise awareness and really push our boundaries. You know, we all should be lifelong learners, right? So I think that was just, but I was not raising my hand. Apologies for that.
No problem.
That was just
a quick comment, Isabel.
Yes, actually, my comment was for your former question where you were asking what resources are available. And I put it into the chat. One is Aim to Flourish. For those that are not familiar with this is a wonderful initiative, has been over for, I think, 10 years now. And it is free, and it invites students to go out in their community and find a business leader that is actually meeting some of the SDGs. They don't say it like that because probably business people don't know what the SDGs are, but they look for business that are profitable while selling products or services that solve real problems. And then they see in what category of the SDGs they fall, whether it's education, water, sanitation, urban planning, wherever it is. So the students have an experience with a real business leader. They have to discuss, then they learn about the SDGs, then they also learn about a new business model that actually connects profits with the servicing the real the real life needs. And so it's a wonderful model, and there are lots of thousands of stories there from all over the world, and it's free. And I put a little website there in the chat for someone.
Yeah. Thank you, Isabel. About the one of the challenge, we know that leadership, and it's John, you told us that we need to have leadership incentive and some money. If we want, what is your opinion about the current leadership worldwide? You know, there are lots of initiatives where presidents of university are coming themselves. There are more and more networks where actually it's not only the sustainable development director or whatever who actually commit for the school, but it's the president. Have you seen or do you have the feeling that it's something, there is a massive shift now, or it's still slow to have this kind of real leadership and not just the communication part?
Well, I'm happy to start and say I think there is commitment, but clearly it's not enough to meet the huge challenges that we have if we're going to achieve the goals by 2030.
Yep.
You know, it's part of business as usual for universities, whereas we probably need to see a real transformation if we were going to achieve the goals. There's a lack of urgency, I think, about the really huge challenge we face now with 8 years to go until the SDGs are to be delivered. And I am a bit concerned that if we don't, we'll get to the end of it and people will say, well, what did we achieve? You know, have we achieved sufficient? So I think we have to up the urgency.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I think there is one, and David, probably first, and then Anna.
Yes, thank you. I agree with John. I see commitment, but maybe the problem is the path forward isn't as clear as people would like it. But sometimes focusing on all 17 goals is difficult. Maybe sometimes we should focus on the clusters of goals that work well together. But also, I think finding good sources of funding that allow us to carry out trans or multidisciplinary research to solve development problems is not always that easy. There's a lot of money available under climate, but many of our problems are simply inequality problems or waste-generated problems, and it's not as easy to find funding to do good work on trying to create less inequality within different populations. Similarly, in the small island states, we often run into the problem of if you take our GDP and divide it by the small population, suddenly we all look rich because we've got high GDP per capita. So we can't get sources of funding to do various different kinds of work that needs to be done. So I think transformation is key, absolutely key. We've got to change things, not just in the universities, but in the donor community, in the international community as well. Otherwise, we won't meet the goals.
Yeah, I know that the same thing probably for like for the faculty. They have faculty have to understand the link between what they teach and the SDG. But probably we have to train also the leaders, the president, the rector, the chancellor. And I know there are some initiatives, for instance, with JLI, with doing something like that. But I think training the leaders could be also one of the key elements. Anna, you want to add something?
Yes, Jesse, thank you. So related to this, I was meant to comment on the need for training before, but you've all come to it as well. But I want to raise something that can be, how can I say, controversial, but we need to also think that there was a life before the SDGs and there will be a life after the SDGs as the 2030 agenda. And that, so one of the challenges I had thought about to answer to the first question was, what are the limits of integration of the SDGs in our curricula, for instance, but that still allow for flexibility. Because as you mentioned, we are not even 8 years away from the end of the agenda. We know how these processes in academia take a lot of time to take place sometimes. Although we are all, and we should all be very committed to the agenda itself, we also, I believe we also need to have some freedom of space and flexibility to understand the problems in a systemic way beyond the squares, if you know what I mean. Thank you. That was just some food for thought.
Okay, thanks a lot. I will give the floor to Mr. Takimoto. Just before that, because I see that the timing we are running. So I will ask after you, Mr. Takimoto, all of the panel. We have lots of people today at this webinar. If all of you can share one advice for someone, it could be a faculty, it could be a leaders, it could be a president or a student. So the best advice that you want to share with someone. But first, Mr. Takimoto, if you can.
Yeah,
start.
thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good discussion. So touching upon the leadership of university, and then also I'd like to take the comments by someone in the chat box on the importance of secondary education. So I think the leadership of the university should extend multi-stakeholder partnership in the region, in the local areas, engaging the high schools and private sectors, and to launch, to work together to educate more younger people, high school students, junior high school students, on the importance of synergetic matters between, for example, climate change and other SDGs. And private sector have an important role to provide financial assistance or technical assistance, or providing facility on experiment conducted by young people. In my experience, then very good students studying to invent biodegradable plastics are provided a good big support by not only by high school teachers, but also university professors and private sectors. And then so through that they can get a knowledge, and also they can knowledge on the synergy between circular economy and climate change issues through their activities. So I think university top leaders can have a role to communicate with stakeholders in the region. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So last round, quick advice. I will start with Mr. David Smith.
Thank you. Waste, inequality, climate change, and biodiversity will stop us from meeting the goals. We need to focus on well-being, economics, communities that are sustainable, food chains, energy, and climate if we are going to move forward, rather than just focusing on 17 goals, which is a lot. But the only way to move forward and to solve the problems is through transdisciplinary and multidisciplinary research. So the advice is that universities must reward transdisciplinary and multidisciplinary research and help academics get their mindset out of the idea that a multi-authored paper is a bad thing and a single-authored paper is the best thing in the world.
Thank you so much. Good advice. Anna, an advice? Do you have any advice for our guest?
Yes, I would say that we need to look at sustainability in general, and well, of course, the SDG in particular, but sustainability not as an add-on to our activity. So it really has to be embedded into our strategy. I think that's the core concern, that as a scholar coming from strategy as well, that's my core concern, that it's not something nice to have that we want to do because it's fashionable and everyone is talking about. it, but how to really bring it into our strategy, to embed it into our strategy. So that's my advice, if I may.
A good advice also, Anna. Thank you so much. Isabel.
Okay, well, I thought of two P's. The first P stands for purpose. And it is a very simple question to ask our students. Why are you doing what you're doing? And it is very powerful. The second P is project. Help students connect, engage with the project so they can make a difference. And it doesn't have to be a 3-year-long project. It could be a short project, but that is very empowering and raises their agency. The two P's.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, learning by doing, it's always a good way. John, please. Any advice?
I will add a third P then to Isabel's two, and that is partnerships. And I think they're obviously partly formal partnerships involving institutes and universities, but for individual academics throughout their careers, thinking about how they can get stronger networks and partnerships in whether it's in government and business, and reaching out beyond the university. Because whether it's the Sustainable Development Goals or whatever happens after 2030, we'll have the same challenges. And the critical thing will be the people, the partners that we work on to solve them.
I think you're right. There is probably one of the richness of the SDG is to have added partnership in that framework, and I think it's one key and probably one that we don't work enough on. Thank you, John and Arif. If you can give your advice.
Yes, I think a commitment of stakeholders is very, very important to achieve SDGs. When we are talking about leadership, actually it's not about how to lead university internally, but actually we need to engage industry, we need to engage a community and political entity to open communication space with policymakers, with local and central government. And because for SDGs, collaboration is a must. So we need to have, mindset how to promote the collaborations and synergy to achieve SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks all our panel. Thanks all our guests for your question and for being with us today. Of course, in 1 hour, we don't have we won't resolve, and we never resolve all the problem in 1 hour, even if we are all good. So it's just more an opening, a beginning, or at least one step. I will thanks a lot to all of you, and I will now pass the floor to Florencia.
Thank you so much, HESI, and all of our distinguished speakers for your remarkable comments and for sharing your expertise and experience with all of us. It has been really a fascinating conversation. So now my task is to give you a reminder of the next steps that we have for HESI Plus 10. As you know, we're celebrating the 10th anniversary of HESI this year. So we have this series of webinars, which this one was the number 2. We have the next one coming up on the 21st of June, 9 a.m. Eastern time, just like this one, which we're going to focus on inspirational higher education initiatives focused on SDG 4, 5, 14, 15, and 17. Right after that, a month after, on the 6th of July, we're going to have our HESI Plus 10th Global Forum. As many of you know, every year we do a special event at the high-level political forum. And in this case, this year, we're going to be reviewing the SDG 4 at the high-level political forum. So we also look forward to having you there, and the input that we're receiving in these 3 webinars, as well as the global forum, we're going to incorporate in a declaration of outcomes, and all of this input that we're collecting is also going to be shared in September 2022 this year on the UN Transforming Educational Summit. So please stay with us. Thank you for your work, for continue to work on the SDGs. Please, if you haven't gone to HESI yet, to the website, join us. We need partnerships and collaboration. We have heard that. We need everyone to be able to advance the agenda. No one can do it by ourselves, and we need to make sure that we leave no one behind. Thank you so much to all of you, to the audience, to the speakers, to the moderator. Thank you so much, Ola and Sophie, also for hosting. Thank you, Andesa. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Florencia.
Bye. Thank you for the